Today's sponsor of the podcast is our friends 13. It is a high quality clothing line made by high quality people. From their t-shirts, their hoodies, their sweatpants, everything fits really nicely. They've been a long-time supporter of the show, and I love everything that they put out. I'm telling you, the people behind the scenes are just wonderful people. So you gotta go support them. Check out their website at thur13en.com. Pick yourself up a t-shirt, maybe a hoodie. Just make sure you use the code word CoryCast at checkout, and you're gonna save yourself a little bit of money. Today's guest has quite the interesting story, from getting 5 open heart surgeries to having scoliosis to running a very successful solar power business with a very unique business model. Dakota takes those trials and tribulations and heartache he's gone through and uses them as fuel, as a catapult for his success, while others would use it as a crutch or an excuse to why they couldn't do something and make it a very much a limiting belief. Dakota does the exact opposite. He is a super motivated guy and super intelligent. I left that conversation feeling really inspired, really motivated, and really humbled, because I have not had to go through the crazy hardships that Dakota has. I only wish that him and I could have talked for another hour. It seemed like long lost friends during our conversation. There were so many common threads with him doing Muay Thai, being an entrepreneur. I just love Dakota's mindset and where his head is at. Do me a favor, if you're listening to this on Spotify, hit that subscribe button, because it will help this podcast reach a whole new audience. And as always, I thank you for your love and support. I have wanted to do this interview with Dakota for a while, so I'm glad we finally sat down, be it virtual, and be able to really dissect what goes into his solar business, how he grew his business, some motivating reads that he likes. He's just all around a good dude, and you're going to find out why. Here's my friend, Dakota Malone. Dakota, we have been friends now, at least online friends, for, I feel like, years, or a year at least, right?
At least.
Right? Through mutual friends and just having a lot of shared friends in common. And I've wanted to do this specific podcast for a while, because you hit me up and you were like, dude, Muay Thai on LinkedIn? No one's doing that. Dude, I love Muay Thai. So you were doing martial arts for a while?
I was, man. Now that you say that, that feels like a couple of years ago, because I remember when I sent you that message now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did. I started during COVID. You know, my brother's a black belt in karate. He's much younger than me. But, just sometime during COVID, it kind of hit me. Like, I had this inner calling to the warrior inside me. And I got into jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai for a short time. Ended up getting absolutely neck cranked, and in addition to one of my many health problems, I have a pretty nasty scoliosis curve. I can show you x-rays after this. Literally, my spine is like a giant snake, and it was literally like, after that I was like, all right, I can't do this. Like, I got a full chiropractic adjustment, a white belt, just fucking around on an open mat with a blue belt, and that say la vie, like, that was the end.
What was it that originally drew you to wanting to do it?
Yeah, like I said, it was just kind of during the pandemic, and I guess maybe it was a combination of just the cabin fever. I was during COVID in downtown St. Louis, and interesting place. I've moved 41 times throughout my life at this point. I am 30 years
41
old.
41 times?
41, yeah.
Dakota, how old are you?
I'm turning 31 in September.
What?
Yeah.
Dude, why are you just moving 1.5 times every single year?
Face, dude, you would love me, right? As a realtor.
Yeah.
Lots of I started my career as a door-to-door salesperson. Is how I got it started. And so I found myself moving all over the country, and then I eventually got addicted to travel. And so did a little bit of, just moving around for pleasure. 2017, I moved to Italy. I'm skipping around my life story at this point, but yeah, I've moved plenty of times, but it was, during COVID 2020, I just, like I said, really felt this call to the warrior inside of me. And it was really the first time that I'd ever faced off with somebody in that kind of setting. I was bullied all throughout, call it not kindergarten, but elementary school. That's the word I'm looking for, all the way through high school. And I'm also someone who's thriving post 5 heart surgeries, but I always grew up with these beliefs that like,
Wait, hold on. You just like skimmed over. Did you say 5 heart surgeries?
Yes.
5, Dakota? 5 heart surgeries?
Yeah. Yep.
Bro, how do you just skim over? We're gonna touch back on that, but I just loved how you're like, yeah. So after I had my 5 heart surgeries, then that's when I moved to Italy. Dude, what the heck, bro? What a life.
Yeah, man. Well, so I had a lot of heart surgeries growing up, and I'm happy to kind of zoom back out. But I will stick to your original question. That's eventually how I got into it. It was during COVID. I felt the call. I started doing, jujitsu and Muay Thai, and I loved it. And eventually I ended up moving back to New York, which is what really made me kind of stop going to the gym. I grew up in Oswego town, so it was like, Tai Kai was just too far to me. I remember driving home after practice, like wadded up, just like barely holding on to the steering wheel for a short drive. And I just, I wasn't willing to commit to it at the time. But I know, like you're up there. I know you're good friends with Chris Smith, who I don't know, personally, but back in the day, I was in a metal band, and he was playing with a band called Ghost Ship, and I would take his
Oh shit, dude!
Yeah, man,
Amazing.
So,
Back in my straight edge days. Yeah, I met Chris through martial arts. It was funny because at the time I hadn't known about Ghost Ship because I was straight edge, and it was like, if you're straight edge, you know the bands, you love them. And I was like, he walks in, I was like, oh shit, I feel like I've seen this dude before, and I definitely saw him play on stage. Yeah, it was funny because I was just like, I wasn't a super huge fan. I just knew of them, and I was like, kind of did a double take. And he ended up being one of like my closest friends. One of like,
dude,
that dude
is human.
You know what's crazy? There's some people that you meet who just like radiate positivity, and that dude is one of them. He is just one of those dudes,
He is.
Speaking of radiating positivity,
okay.
Dakota, you own this you're the co-founder of Community Solar Authority?
Yes.
You said you were a door-to-door salesman. Was that what you were doing to build this solar company?
No. So I started out in the energy space. So I've been in energy for over 10 years now. And the door-to-door sales was really just my foundational level as an entrepreneur. So I'll kind of backtrack. I had 2 emergency surgeries as soon as I was born, 2 heart operations. I had a third in high school. I was 16 years old. That's when I died for the first time. Very
I don't mean to laugh, Dakota, but this is just like your story is wild. You died for the first time.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to just shut my mouth and just let you tell your story. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Feel free to stop whenever. So I'll share with you. The first time I died, it's usually a good story. So I'll tell the condensed version. So I couldn't play sports growing up because I couldn't do any sort of physical activity. I would run 20 feet and my heart felt like it was going to explode. I was born with basically a busted aortic valve, and so every time my blood would go to pump to the rest of my body, I would have blood that would leak back into my heart. Whoa. And so I was 16 years old, and I was coaching the baseball team or managing the baseball team because I wasn't good enough to make the team. And I would wake up in the middle of the night randomly with heart palpitations, just a rapid heartbeat. And it would last for like 5 to 10 minutes at a time, but it was never long enough for me to get to the ER or get plugged up to an EKG for the doctors to kind of figure out what was going on. Except this time I was coaching a baseball game, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, no idea. But my heart, my rapid heartbeat started again. And this time it didn't stop. And so 5 minutes turned into a half hour turned into an hour and a half. I was 2.5 hours deep when I finally got to the ER in Oswego. My heart rate was 214 for 2.5 hours. At that point, you feel like you're dead because your blood is using up all of your calories. Wow. And, the ER was packed. I had to split a room with a guy who had a heart attack and died next to me because doctors chose to work on my life instead because I was younger. Whoa. And, I was 16 years old. They were shoving my face into buckets of ice trying to slow my heart rate down. Nothing was working. I was with my dad and my grandfather. Doctor walks in and he says, "Dakota, I'm sorry, but we have to shut off your heart." And I remember just looking at my dad and looking at my grandfather and just being like, this is it. And, they pump what's called adenosine into an IV, and it really starts in your fingers and toes and outer extremities. And it basically sucks everything into your chest. And then and your heart just resets. And so I went from 214 to my resting heart rate like instantaneously. And that had to happen like 5 or 6 more times after that day for them to finally figure out that I had something called tachycardia, which just, is a fancy word for rapid heartbeat. But what was happening was my aortic valve was leaking blood back into my heart. And then my tachycardia, basically my cells created an extra pathway on my heart. So I would just have blood recycling over and over again into my heart. It was a very uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
And so, I had my third heart surgery. They went in through, which I was wide awake for, Cory. They went in through my arms and my legs, and they went in through my arteries and basically shocked that off. And if you could imagine, I was left with lots of physical trauma from that. I remember disassociating out of my body and watching myself have heart surgery, just kind of lying there on the operating table. And, that's eventually what got me into, hypnosis and subconscious work and really trying to understand like how to heal trauma. And, my fourth and fifth heart surgeries came my senior year of high school. My fifth and final was open heart a week after I graduated high school. And that kind of set the foundation for my childhood and the rest of my life, where it was like every day matters, life is super important, but also like I want to get out and explore because like I've already been dead. I've already kind of seen that and understand that. And for me, like my reality was broken at that point. There's no way I was going to live like a quote unquote normal life and really do what was expected of me or what people wanted me to do. My doctors told me, don't work out, don't travel, don't do this, stay inside. And I was just like, there's no freaking way that I'm not living life on my terms. So that's what really set me up to eventually get into door-to-door sales, which was really just my ticket out of my hometown. I went to Hannibal High School. I graduated with less than 100 kids. And I went to community college, CCC. I handed my parents my 2 years degree. I said, please leave me alone because I'm not going to a 4-year. And I got into door-to-door sales as a ticket to get out of town.
Wow. I cannot imagine being 17, 18, graduating high school and having that type of event happen. That's like mind altering, like you said, trauma inducing kind of, dude, open heart surgery at 17, 18 years old. That's crazy to me. That's wild.
Yeah. It's funny because this may be another ridiculous sentence, but 2022, I was in the jungles of Colombia for an ayahuasca ceremony and really working through the healing of all of this physical trauma. And to kind of seal the ceremony, I got a jaguar tattooed over my open heart scar. And I always said like nothing was more painful than the actual open heart until I got tattooed on my chest over my scar. And it was just like, man, I was going like in and out of consciousness getting it done. Like it was rough. It was like a ceremony on top of the ceremony. But yeah, man, I'm healthier than ever. I, work out 5-6 days a week. I take care of my body. I just got done with a fascial release session, which is why I feel so good right now, which is like a combination of like stretching and breath work at the same time. It's by this organization called Human Garage. It's great for jujitsu and anybody else who just has physical strain or scoliosis. It's a free app people can download. They do like a 28-day. It's called Human Garage. And this guy's just dedicated. I believe he started as a chiropractor. But now he just does what's called fascial release. And, I'm a big believer that the body keeps the score, which is, we have our mind up here, which is our conscious thoughts, which is really 5% of our waking reality. And the rest is all our subconscious programming. And what I've learned is that the body is really the subconscious mind. And as you move through trauma and release, fascia, which holds your muscles, bones, organ, it holds your whole body together. That's what really allows, your body to heal itself. And I'm a big believer in that. I was obviously saved by traditional medicine, but at the same time, I've walked a very, I study shamanic medicine and I follow a very holistic path. Because to me, I believe that I'm capable of healing myself. And, through my scoliosis and my heart surgery journey, I really just try to empower other people that, life's about what we believe it is. And those limiting beliefs holds us back more than anything else, more than the excuses we make. Really our life is a combination of what we're focused on, the language we use, and really the beliefs that we carry. And, I just try to inspire other people through my own journey and go on my own crazy adventures along the way and try to.
Well, that's the interesting thing. You said like limiting beliefs, and I feel like somebody would go through something that you went through and use that as well, I don't want to do X because of my scoliosis. I don't want to do X because my heart could explode.
So I see it all the time. Yeah.
How do you like rewire your brain? Is that just from a lot of meditation? Is there a certain process that you do?
Yeah. So this is a super interesting subject because meditation is one way. Like I said, I got really into hypnosis because I found it to be such an effective form of therapy and release. And
Are
so
you
for
doing
me,
are you hypnotizing yourself?
I can do both at this point. Yeah. But
Oh,
traditionally, I did all of my work with a gentleman named Kip Brooks. Shout out to Kip. He's one of my close friends. I ended up teaching his son how to do door-to-door sales, and I'm super tight with his family now. And Kip was really the one who taught me hypnosis at the level that I needed to learn it to where I could start to make considerable changes. And he created his own version of what's called timeline therapy or Gestalt therapy, and it's really about going back into the timeline of our lives and really releasing what we had stored there, all of the trauma there, all of the emotions. And when you can release that, you're essentially rewriting the script and therefore rewriting the programming to your life. And so there's a bunch of different ways to do it. There's the path of meditation, there's the path of just paying attention to the language you use. Like I used to follow my parents around the house religiously and just tell them that your language unlocks your emotion. And I've done a lot of high performance coaching since then. And like even when I'm just from like training door to door salespeople or talking to my friends or hanging out with the people that I do, there is a distinct language difference between people who are winners and people who are not. And again, like someone who walks around saying, I'm not good enough, and they may not even be using the language, it may just be subconscious. It may be so much more subtle than that, Cory. But like you said, I can't do that because of X. Like you are literally just speaking the programming that you want to run in your body. And so I'm very conscious of the language that I use because it really is that important. Like, words are magic, and that's why it's called spell.
Yeah, and I don't think I know you're a big reader. I was just watching your LinkedIn video.
Yes.
My friend gave me this book that I just finished. It's called Where Winners Live. Have you ever read this book?
Never heard of it. No.
Dude, you would love this because it's all
I'm gonna
about.
add it to my list.
Dude, this has got you up. It's got your name written all over because like this is about where winners live. Sell more, earn more, achieve more through personal accountability, which is what this book is all about. That
Yes.
the winners, and specifically, this book was written from a perspective of like a financial advisor, and financial advisor working with clients, making different sales goals, et cetera, et cetera. There's some kind of common threads between real estate, but the core of this whole book is having the accountability of being like, okay, really, I am in full control of the stuff that I do, and I didn't make my phone calls not because my day got too busy, but because I wasn't good at time blocking for that day. Like being able to take a situation where maybe you have failed and trying to reframe it in a position of not this is an external someone else's fault. It's the weather or traffic or whatever, but how reframing those situations and how like having some accountability and realizing that maybe you're the core and the root of why you show up 10 minutes late to every appointment. Maybe that's not the traffic, dude. Maybe you need a little more accountability and a different system in place. I read that probably in like a week. I bet you would fly through that and you would love that book. And speaking of books, kind of keeping on that train of thought, you did that LinkedIn video on different books that you like, and I love the 80-20 rule. Can you explain a little bit about what your 80-20 rule is with books?
Yeah, totally. And so I use the 80-20 rule in so many different facets of my life. The basis of it is Paro's principle. And I believe there's different stories about how it started, but my interpretation was that, this guy was farming and he noticed that 80% of his crops that would yield came from 20% of the seeds that he planted. And that's really a repeating theme throughout, math and other sorts of equations in life. And I use it in business all the time. And so, when I was giving the context in reading, when I think about reading books, it's not that I just want to read a single book one time and then move on. And I've got a giant library behind me and I have read most of them. But for me, when I read a really good book, I will, have my own version of how I kind of mark it up. Like I'm going through a book right now called The Gene Keys. And to me, it's like a giant library of consciousness. And to me, I think it's super interesting because, this guy basically had not even an epiphany, but he basically, went through this altered state of consciousness for a period of 3 days and 3 nights. And from that experience, he wrote an entire book that basically helps map and unlock consciousness. And again, for me, I just think it's super interesting because I study this stuff. But when I read something like that, it's not like I just read it and then set it down. It's that I read the stuff that is going to bring me 80% of what I'm looking for. And so again, the idea is like, if I'm looking to sell better, I would read or ask myself, what are the 20% of sales books that are going to bring me 80% of the results? And then from there, I would just read those books over and over and over again, not just one time through and then move on to the next one. Because the reality is most books just aren't that good. Like,
Right.
and that's what I appreciate about people like Alex Hormozy, who literally edited that book, I think like over 20 times before he whittled it down to the most simple form of reading that you can get it and the most basic building blocks of how you can learn it. And to me, that's what I want to digest, is like, what's the easiest bite-sized stuff that I can digest that I can actually go and apply. And I think that's the real unlock to reading, is like not just reading for entertainment, which is great. I also read fiction just to kind of unlock the mind and open up creativity. But again, if I'm looking for that, then I'm looking for those specific books that are going to bring that, to me. And that's really how I think about the 80-20 rule.
I think my personal flaw is with books and reading. I just started also, I don't want to talk like I'm this freaking scholar over here. I just started reading like this past year because it's been something that I've never put focus on and never really gave a shit about. But since I've started this past year now, I have been like gravitating towards books that would like selfishly benefit me in some way, whether it's business, life, or parenting. And I haven't like picked up a fiction book because I'm just like, no, there's no good information. And I'm like, I got to remind myself, hey, it's okay to just like chill and read a book that doesn't have how to sell better or how to have more accountability in your life. It's okay to read a book about a bunch of dwarves and elves that go on an adventure to throw a ring in the mountain. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally. And I would argue that it's equally okay to do what you're doing, especially because you've just recently picked up learning, like you're an amazing dad and you care about parenting, and then you're a high performer. And so you're naturally looking into that stuff. And so again, even paying attention to the language, like it's not a personal flaw, like it's just your preferences at the moment.
yeah.
And if you've especially just started reading, like you have your whole life to read fiction and dive into that stuff, which is like totally cool.
Yeah, it's kind of what I like about it too is since I started reading, it's unlocked a couple different perspectives, a couple different viewpoints of like things in business I don't really like think of, and like even the book I was telling, Where Winners Live, like that is a book primarily focused on like being a financial advisor and having your book of business, but there's a lot of common threads for real estate.
Totally. Yeah.
It's just kind of cool. I like the information that it holds that I just have not exposed myself to in any aspect. What are like your top 3 books that you have read over and over and over again?
Yeah, so I mentioned the big one, which is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I
A
literally read
great
that
book. God,
14 times over.
14 times?
14 times.
Nice.
Yeah. That book has made me a lot of money. And, obviously I think about, again, what are the 20% of skills I can learn in business that will bring me 80% of what I'm looking for? And negotiation is one of those. So, when I think about brokering solar deals and doing what we do, we consult for some large solar developers in the US, like having the ability to negotiate with a giant mega corporation is valuable, because the better you can negotiate, the better deals you get. And life is not about saying, hey, we'll just do things 50-50, which is like ironic because I also set up a lot of my partnerships that way, which are 50-50, but it's also knowing about what to negotiate on and what to really fight for. And so to me, some things I'm okay splitting on, and other things I'm like, no, I know what we want. We have a premium service, etc. So Never Split the Difference is a huge one. If I were to turn and look, I would also say, there's an amazing book by a guy named Boyd Varty, which is called Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. And he grew up in the African bush, and he is now a personal development coach. And so I love this book. I've read it multiple times. And the whole basis of it is talking about the metaphor between tracking, like literally lion tracking, and life and personal development. And it's such an interesting read because he really puts you, 20 paces back from the lion, or above the treetops watching the elephants go through the grove down to the watering hole. Like you feel like you're there as you read the book. And it's all about how do we do that for ourselves. And, another thing I study, Cory, is like universal law. And in Hermeticism, one of the universal laws is like as above, so below. And a better way to say that is like everything that's happening in your external world is really just a reflection of what's going on inside you. And so I love that book because it's really about like seeing what's happening in real time in your waking reality, and then noticing where that part of you is actually existing inside of you. And, it's been fascinating for me because it's really a way to track your emotions, what you're actually feeling inside. And again, it really just goes back to healing and, sort of a personal development path. And so that's another big one. And then I guess just another one at random. I mentioned The Body Keeps the Score. That's another one on healing and just kind of like physical work. That book changed my life. And then I'm staring at The Dichotomy of Leadership, anything by Jocko with extreme ownership, kind of back to what you were just reading.
Yeah.
Any sorts of stuff by Jocko. Again, I think he's an amazing storyteller. Love his podcast, and I think he's a great writer as well.
How, like, you seem to be such a self-made person. It doesn't seem like shit was handed in the sense of like just like jumping in and doing door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
Not for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, was the motivation really like just to jump out of your hometown?
It was completely avoiding pain. Yeah, I think that humans are motivated by chasing pleasure or avoiding pain. And for me, the pain of staying home and this is through my interpretation. There's nothing wrong with people that do this, but for my interpretation, if I stayed home, then I wasn't going to live the life that I wanted. And so, it was my third day doing door-to-door sales, Cory. I was on a road trip in Albany. My manager that was training me is my now business partner 10 years later. And, we were in a Stewart's gas station. It was the middle of winter. I had zero sales, no reason to believe I was ever going to be good at door-to-door sales. I had my hands wrapped around a coffee trying to warm up in the Stewart's gas station. And my dad calls me. And my dad worked at Novelis, he still does, for 37 years now, in Oswego, which is an aluminum recycling plant. And he called me up and he's like, "Hey, Dakota, I got you a job interview. Like, you can come home. You don't have to do door-to-door sales anymore." And it was in that moment that it was just like a fork in the road. And again, I had zero sales, no reason to believe I was good, but I was hooked at that adventure. There was like 11 dudes in a single hotel room. We were driving around a shitty ass van, super questionable characters. But to me, I was like, whoa, like this is unlike anything I was a waiter at Friendly's, just to kind of put that in perspective. And then before that, I was rolling burritos at Fajita Grill. Those are my two W-2 jobs I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
So for the last decade, I've been self-employed. For the last 6, I've been in entrepreneurship. But my dad calls me and I was like, "Dad, like, I think I just want to do door-to-door sales instead." And he was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And that was like really the fork in the road moment where I was just like, I am going to figure this out. And I did. 2016, I was the #1 door-to-door salesperson globally for this Fortune 500 energy company that I was working for. The best person in the world, no reason to believe. And my dad really didn't believe it either until I brought him on a trip to Mexico. Like we won awards for the company, and I would kind of go up, and that's when everyone knew my name, and I knew who nobody was, and it was really surreal. But that's what really kind of broke it down for my dad, and really built our relationship from there. We had an amazing time in Mexico, and from there it just kind of grew. And then I eventually jumped into entrepreneurship when I thought about, okay, well, what does this actually look like? Because eventually I got to a point, Cory, where my health was deteriorating. I was going up and down steps 6 days a week. I had no social life. I could only make money when I was selling or my team was selling. And this was when I was starting to get into entrepreneurship. This was really pre-social media, before you saw the Gary V's of the world on the stage. But it was 2016. My best friend called me from Italy. He was in the Air Force as a canine handler. He called me up and I was like, "Dude, I'm not doing well." And he's like, "I double dog dare you to quit your job and just come live with me for a little bit." And I was like, "Say no more." And I shut the office down. I quit everything I was doing. I moved to Italy, and I was committed to learning remote work. I had all of this money saved up. So, I was good for a while.
Tim Ferriss was big, all about the 5-hour work week is all about working virtually and working remotely.
That's the book that set it off for me, Cory. Was the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Yeah, I read in there the concept of mini retirements and the idea of doing like extended 90-day trips out somewhere else to immerse in the culture. And I said, "Dude, this is a perfect fit." It was 2017. I bought a bunch of Bitcoin and other crypto and got really into it.
Damn, dude, 2017 you bought. Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, man. I had so the kicker to the story is, so I bought 4 Bitcoin and or 5 Bitcoin. I had 4 of it stolen from me. So I got into this Ponzi scheme called BitConnect, which is this like wild freaking story where, you know, I was in Italy, and at the time I was bankrolling like $600-700 a day doing nothing. You know, it was a Ponzi scheme, so it took your money, it locked it up, but then it would spit money back out at you in smaller amounts. And so I invested for Bitcoin at the time, which at the time I think I bought it for less than 4 grand, so very very cheap compared to what it is now. And you know, I was making a bunch of money, and I was like, dude, I've got this figured out. Like, remote work's so easy. You know? And eventually
Right.
that came crashing down on me. And but I learned the lessons in the meantime, and that's what I was really after. And so I spent a few months in Italy. I saw 12 countries that year. I understood that I needed to figure out a way to make money off of my laptop. And so eventually, when I did come back to the States, I was prepared to do that. And that was really the mindset that I have was, you know, I need to get into a higher leveraged opportunity vehicle where I can make money at any time of the day. And then I really need to figure out a way to do it remote to where I'm not actually, you know, burning out my physical self trying to change my or exchange my time for money. And that was really the foundation for entrepreneurship for me.
It's interesting because it's such a entrepreneurship, especially the grind of door to door sales is not fun. So I don't know how long were you doing that for? I forgot what you said.
So I did it from end of 2012 to 2017. So 5 years ish.
So doing door to door sales, trying to basically, the idea was just try to get people to sign up for solar energy. Was that the whole pitch?
Yeah, so this was pre-solar. This was actually just standard commoditized gas and electric, and it was a grind. You know, I worked in some of the nicest neighborhoods in the country. I worked in some of the most dangerous. You know, there was a point where I lived on the west side of Chicago. I had nothing but gangsters disciples on my blocks. We were homies. I parked my van there the first day. They're like, "Who is this white boy on our block?" I would buy them Dunkin'. We'd chill out on the end of the block every day. Like, we had a really cool relationship. And I met lots of people doing door to door sales from all walks of life. You know, I taught multiple people how to make thousands of dollars a week knocking on doors. And like I said, I eventually trained my hypnosis mentor's son, who was 14 years old at the time. I took him door knocking for a weekend. On his very first day by himself, he made $400, and now he runs a window washing business at 16. He makes like $200 an hour, and he's just
Nuts.
killing it.
That's
And so
amazing.
for me, like, it was totally worth it. And I remember, Cory, I remember it being, you know, 7:30 at night in the middle of winter in Columbus, Ohio. I was on this cold ass, you know, block. It was snowing outside, and I literally remember saying to myself, like, I'm going to make sure that this is worth it. Like, I can remember those moments. And of course, in the moment, that was me practicing my language and really being in control of, you know, my destiny. But I remember it was Saturday night and everybody would party, and I had lots of money and I could go party, but I was working. You know, I was knocking on doors at, you know, 6 o'clock at night on a Saturday. And that was just normal for me. And I guess I was willing to at the time, you know, because I never really got into partying. I go to a lot of raves now, but sober. You know, I was just at a rave until 4 a.m. on Friday,
Man,
completely sober. And you know, but for me, I was willing to trade my 20s for, you know, I think I heard Grant Cardone say it first, which isn't necessarily my idol. I do respect him and appreciate what he's built. But, you know, he said, pay the price today so you can pay any price tomorrow. And so in my 20s, I was like, fuck it. Like, I've got nothing but time. I'm going to learn the skills. I'm going to make the money. I'm going to earn the habits and learn the discipline, which set me up for my 30s. And, you know, here I am going on 31 in September. And, you know, I'm nowhere near where I want to be with our company, but we're growing. You know, we just launched a development side. So we're actually building and constructing these solar farms ourselves now. And we're brokering these deals as well at a large scale. We're working with Fortune 500 companies and municipalities and some of the most significant solar developers in the country. And to me, like, I would have never been able to do it without foundational level skills. And it started with door to door, and it started with being willing to go outside and be told no a million fucking times and still be able to move forward. And to me, like, now I just have such thick skin. You know, like, I was at a board meeting last month, literally got laughed out of the room at a municipal board meeting for pitching them on solar. I would have saved them $1 million a year, and full room, 2 news cameras on my face, and literally just got laughed out the door. And to me, I was just like, well, like, on to the next one, like, you know, because that's just what it is. And like, that's a superpower in and of itself, being willing to hear the word no and not be affected by it. Especially if you're trying to get into entrepreneurship, real estate, like any of this stuff, like, it is all hard. There's a level of uninformed optimism when you get into something new, like, oh, I'm going to be a real estate agent and sell houses. And then it's like, yeah, like let that smack you in the face after 6 months and
Yeah.
you don't have any sales, and are you willing to stick it out? Are you willing to have the grit? And I don't know, like I value those skills, and I especially value them when I see other people kind of working through that and going through what I did and still go through now. Like I'm definitely not done putting myself through that. But also like really being cognizant of like how do you leverage your time, which kind of goes back to buying back your time and staying in your zone of genius and what kind of rambling at this point, but that's really how I think about buying back my time, working on things that I'm focused on. But to me, it starts with that foundational level of skills.
Well, again, I mean, this is, I hate to say it again, but this is just another like a common thread that we share, because I was in retail management before I got into real estate. And I remember the first like 3 years I was in real estate, it was just like long days. I mean, it still is, but I mean, I was working at the store like from 7 to 5, and then show houses from 5 to 7, and then from 7 to 8, I was writing offers, and then still being on the phone until 9. And just like you said, I remember driving after I used to carry 3 changes of clothes in my car. I would have my runnings outfit, which was the retail store I worked at. I would have a change of professional clothes in case I had to show a house, and then I also had, I think I had my jujitsu gi and my Muay Thai shorts, because I never knew if an appointment would run too long, I would miss class, right? So I always would just come prepared in case I had to make a beeline. And I remember having those days where I was like jamming a Burger King double cheeseburger in my mouth, and like after runnings and then running to my appointment and just being like, I'm so stressed out now, but like this is going to be worth it in the end. I'm trying to build my real estate book of business. I'm trying to really do something my future self will thank me for. And I remember telling myself that in a Burger King parking lot, mind you, Dakota, that I was like, this shit is going to work. Like I love this real estate job and I want this to be my full-time gig. And 4 years, I was able to make it transition to the full-time. It took a long time, but it was worth it for sure. For sure.
Yeah, dude. And now you're killing it. I see you're doing the continuous improvement. Like I saw the certifications that you just worked on, went through and got, and all of that stacks.
Yeah, and it's just a fulfilling job that I love to do, because I like to help people and I like to help them navigate through the whole complex like process of buying a house. It's very cumbersome and kind of annoying. As you know, 41 freaking times you've moved left, right, east, south, dude. Like you've been all over the place. How have, like, after all these years, it just seems like grind after daily grind after daily grind. Do you remember a time when it finally was like the light bulb went off? You're like, this is what I've been working towards. This is what I've been trying to do. This moment is finally upon me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't really believe in that moment. I think I've certainly had flashes of it. There was a time where even before I got into solar and after I came home from Italy, I built a $7 million a year business, and we were crushing it, and it all fell apart. My business partner tried to steal the business out from under me. The whole thing crumbled to the ground. There was a point though where I was living in a penthouse, had an elevator inside my apartment. I was young and had an ego and thought I had it all figured out. And, I was bankrolling every month, and, then it was all gone. And I look at it now to where, I love the life that I have now. I'm focused on being a fiance, soon to be husband, building my business and trying to make a positive impact. I've done lots of plant medicine ceremonies where I've kind of contained that ego and really reshaped it to where, the material stuff does not mean anything to me anymore. So I think there will always be moments where I feel like, hey, I've got this figured out. And I think I'll always carry that with me now. But I think that's really more confidence than it is like any sort of financial milestone. And again, that confidence comes from the skills. Like if I were to lose everything, I could literally just go outside my door and start knocking on doors and asking people to buy shit again. And I'm never scared to go back to that if that's what it gets back down to. One, because I love sales. It's what I've done since, I was a waiter at Friendly's. And to me, it's just like, it's the highest paying job in the world. you can make more money as a salesperson than you can as a surgeon, than you can as an anesthesiologist, than you can as anything else. And to me, once I learned how to sell, then it was all just about like, okay, well, how do I sell something that's more expensive? Like, what's the most expensive thing I can sell? Which is essentially how I got into solar. Was I realized like, oh, like, through government pressure or just massive, consumers wanting to invest into sustainable companies, that I could sell sustainability services to people who needed it the most, which are large users of electricity.
What do
So
you
that's how I
think
think
being
about
in like solar for so long, what do you think is like the biggest misconception that people have about it?
The biggest objection we get from what we do, because I'm in the community solar space, which is really niche. So there's like on-site solar where people will install it. They'll be able to pay for their system at like, basically get like a fixed price on their solar that's cheaper than the utility, so they pay less. I'm in a totally different space. So I'm in something called community solar. And people always tell me, like, Dakota, this sounds too good to be true, because the wind up in the pitch is like, hey, Cory, for $0, meaning this isn't going to cost you anything, you don't have to install solar on site. In exchange for helping clean the energy grid and do a good deed, you get guaranteed lower electricity costs for the next decade. Sound fair? Like, that's the wind up in the pitch to what we do. And really the way that it works is that, New York State, for example, has 100% renewable energy commitments. They're going to say, hey, we're going to be 100% renewable in the next X amount of time. And so as a way to help reach those sustainability commitments, they started building these large scale solar farms. These solar farms plug into national grid service territory, for example, and they help clean the energy grid, but they need off takers to be able to run and generate that electricity. And so we work with municipalities, investors, big businesses. We help them participate in these local solar projects. They help clean the energy grid and produce the energy there. And then in exchange for helping clean the energy grid, they get bill credits back on their bill. So it's a way for them to enhance sustainability practices and improve their operating profit by lowering electricity costs. It just so happens it doesn't cost them a single dollar to participate, and they don't have to install solar on site. I sell the easiest freaking thing in the world. And we get paid big fees by these developers for helping them fill their solar projects. So really our clients are the solar developers, but we do these local sustainability partnerships. We've got some really good ones that I can't say just yet, but I'm really excited to announce in CNY, like staple businesses. And, I'm hoping to throw a PR party sometime in September. I would love to invite you if it ends up happening. We're going to do it right on site and really just show people some of the work that we're doing. But, I've been really big into bringing these incentives into Central New York, for example, because the government, and this is like the kicker, is like people are like, this sounds way too good to be true. How can I save money for free? And the reality is like the government's putting billions and trillions of dollars, like it's $1 trillion clean energy economy. So they are putting billions of taxpayer dollars incentives into this already. And it's not like, is this available? It's like, if you claim this, you can unlock these available incentives. And so part of our big focus has been like, how do we dump those incentives into Central New York businesses? How do we get them educated on the available opportunity? We're not just pulling money out of thin air. It's like, this money has already been allocated for this, so you might as well claim it if you're interested in enhancing sustainability and improving your profits. And, our business was founded off a thesis, which is like, the more sustainable you are, the more likely you remain in business for the long term. And so, our business model has just been about really proving ourselves right and kind of showcasing our wins along the way.
In New York State, you had mentioned that New York State has like a zero emissions goal, right? Or is a clean energy goal to be totally I feel like I'm talking out of my ass. Totally clean energy by like 2020 something. Like when is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, so they keep pushing the goal lines back, right? Because it's easier said than done. I think the original commitment was 2030, and that's pretty typical. We see the same exact legislation in Illinois, 100% renewable energy commitments, and community solar is going nationwide, which is why I feel really good about one, job security, is we're watching this legislation unfold, and so we've got our systems dialed in over the last half decade of doing this. And so we're just running a predictable system for large users that are coming into play. And we're just kind of like ratcheting the straps of the quality and sizes of the organizations we're working with. Like right now we're going through contracting with an $80 billion company, one of the largest transportation companies in the North America. And we're doing a rollout across all 7 or 8 states that they're in. And, as these states come online with these renewable energy commitments, the opportunity is there for the taking. Again, it's just like, you have to be educated, you have to know how to do it. And it just so happens we do it for free for our clients. we say, hey, we'll do this whole process for you. We could charge hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we would make our business way more valuable. There's a few reasons that we don't do that at this point, which, you know, I can happily get into kind of business thesis and how we think through that. But again, it's really just about, you know, as states come online with this legislation, it's all just about helping educate the customer, providing the most value, and really giving them the systems to be able to execute it. And, you know, that's how we've been able to grow our business.
Do you think mostly what you're doing is like when you sit down and you're across that big CEO, is it mostly just like an education? Like you trying to educate them a little bit on how solar works and yada, yada, yada?
Yeah, it is mostly education for sure.
Uh,
I think that's how most sales is, though, Cory. You know, it's like if you have a superior product, then your best weapon is education. Like, unless you're a bullshitter and you don't believe in your product, right? And I'm sure you feel the same exact way with real estate. It's like, you know, it's really just about educating the homeowner on why that home is the right purchase for them, not trying to like force them into purchasing something that's not a good fit.
yeah.
And so to
It's
me,
just like
I think sales
listening,
is
right?
education. Yeah,
Like listening to what they need and how you can help them accomplish that. You know what I mean?
it's all about the soft skills. And, you know, like another recent course that I've taken to improve that, it brings me kind of back to Never Split the Difference, which is all about tactical empathy, which is like properly labeling people and really getting into their world and seeing things as they see it. But, you know, I recently took a course called Circling. And again, it was really a way of how to relate to people. But it directly applies to sales as well, which is like, you know, empathy is more than just active listening. It's about being able to, in this case, circle back with this person and really get into what they're feeling. And so that may be like a tactical label, like, wow, Cory, when I hear you talk about real estate and how much, you know, you love helping your clients and how much you love your business, I feel in my heart like how exciting of a business it is to be in something like that, where you can take care of your family, you start to create your own schedule, and it really starts to pay off after 4 years. And now all of a sudden, I'm completely in your world, because not only am I listening, but I'm able to kind of repeat it back to you in a way where I can literally be with you. And there's nothing else going on other than the conversation that we're having right here. And that's what I love about business, selling, but just life in general, is I'm super curious about people. And I guess maybe just through all of my surgeries and just my story with health, like I just love being present with people, sitting down with them, and just really being a part of their world for like however short period of time it is. And I've experienced that a lot with like friendships and relationships as well, because I've moved around so much. I have friends all over the world. 90% I'll never see again. And that's okay. You know, because for that short time I was with them, like we were able to create stuff on my life resume. We were able to have these, you know, fun moments that we created. But that kind of goes back to my just like overall thoughts on life, which is like every day matters, life is important, and like the quality of relationships and the time that you spend is important. And so,
Yeah,
you know, that's really how I think about that.
I saw a meme online that was like, it's not really a funny meme, but it was just like, you are a combination of all of your different life experiences. And a beautiful way to put it is like, you know, I love sushi because my wife introduced me to sushi. I had a pretty closed mind before I met her. So now sushi is a thing that I enjoy. Or like, what's another good example? Diablo. Diablo 4, I played obsessively because my friend Mike played it, and my cousin Ryan, who's my best friend when I was 10, was all about it. So I played Diablo because of them. And it's like your life is made of all these like little experiences and little things about your friends or family or the people you spend time with that you might not realize. And when I saw that, I was like, damn, I started looking for that more. Do you know what I mean? Started looking for that more in my life. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I do just like Dungeons and Dragons because I get to hang out with my friends every Sunday. And thanks to Dennis and Mike, I found something that I really love. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for them. All these different shared experiences that you have with your friends, family, colleagues, kind of make up your persona a little bit, huh? Is that interesting?
They do. Yeah, 100%. It's super interesting to me because, you know, in hypnosis, we talk about it as like a spoon in a waterfall. And the idea is that, you know, we take on, well, first of all, there's the field around us. And in this field are so many different sensory experiences, but we're only experiencing such a small portion of it because of our brain processing. So there's all these bits of information, but we're taking in such a small piece of it. And the way that we compute it is like putting a spoon in a waterfall. And so if there's a waterfall of information, wherever you put that spoon is really the lived experience that you have. And essentially, if you ever want to change for whatever reason, you change the way, you change where you hold the spoon. And the way that you do that is what I said earlier, which is your focus, your language, and your beliefs. And so what you're focused on directly impacts the emotions and the experience that you have. And that's why two people can have the same exact experience, but end up in two totally different places. So two kids grow up in an alcoholic home. One becomes an alcoholic and an abuser. The other becomes sober and an amazing father for the rest of his life. Two kids, same exact experience, two different focuses. Second is the language, which is really just like the words that we use to ourselves in an everyday experience. So again, I go to jujitsu, I get neck cranked and I say, fuck, I'm never doing that again. And that was my experience. You get neck cranked and you say, let's fucking roll again, right? Two totally different experiences. And that's how language shapes it. And then the lastly, again, which we kind of touched on, is the beliefs. And this is why the beliefs are so important, because it's not life happening to us, it's life happening for us. And the story that we tell ourselves is literally what dictates how we live our life. And, that's how you move around the sensory experience of life, is like, it doesn't matter what you experienced in the past. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing right now. You literally have and this goes back to personal accountability. Most people don't want to hear this, Cory. Most people do not want to take accountability for the current situation that they're in. But when they can get on the other side of that, then all of a sudden they can start to move the spoon around. And all of a sudden you're not in that location or those circumstances for very much, for much longer. And of course, like I think Tony Robbins says this, like, we highly overestimate where we will be in a year and highly underestimate where we will be in a decade. And the whole point is, like, we want things instantaneously and we want things and change to happen so fast, but you have to build the habits. I had to go do door-to-door sales every freaking day, 6 days a week for 5 years until I had the skill set to be able to change and shift into entrepreneurship, to run and build a company. And it's really the same thing. Like, we want all of these changes immediately, but you don't go to the gym and, snap your fingers and you have a six-pack. Like, it is a consistency that is required for you to continue to show up before you start to see those changes. But when you get to the other side of that, all of a sudden you're in a totally different sensory experience. And that's why it's worth sticking through. So when you can change your focus, when you can change your language, and when you can start to adopt new beliefs that serve you, your entire life will change. It may not happen overnight, but that is the path to actually changing, the way that you experience and move through reality.
For somebody who is listening right now, maybe wants to do better and maybe guide their life on a better path, like where do they start with all of this? Is it the language? Is it what should they focus on?
Yeah, it's funny because, I do a lot of high performance coaching, and I'll ask people, like, the way we start every hypnosis session is like, Cory, what do you want? And it's funny because it does go right to the language, because typically people will just list out a bunch of shit that they don't want. They're like, well, I don't want to be sad anymore, and I don't want to be broke, and I don't want to be depressed. And it's like, okay, you're just telling me what you don't want. But I asked, what do you want? And even in that is a subtle change, but a very large one. And again, it's kind of similar to like the fascial movements, where we have this trauma trapped in our fascia, but when you start to move it in a different way, all of a sudden it starts to release in your body. And language works the same exact way. And the easy way to do it is, if you can only come up with shit that you don't want, write it down, and then literally just go do the opposite. And that's how you figure out what you do want. And that's the same exact thing in business, is like, you look at stuff and it's like, okay, well, how could I grow my company? Like, what would be the easiest way? Instead of trying to figure out the best strategy forward, you figure out the worst. And it's like, what's the guaranteed way for me to fuck up growing this company? And I'd be like, I stopped going to work. I stopped doing sales calls. I stopped trying to partner with people, and I lie to my customers. And it's like, okay, well, what's the opposite of that? I show up every freaking day. I continue selling my ass off as much as I can, and I keep a full schedule. I create and form as many strategic partnerships as I can, and I stay in integrity through and through every single day. And now all of a sudden, I have a freaking recipe to grow my business. And life is so much more simple than, oftentimes we make it, where we think there's all these like new cool strategies that we need to unlock. And it's like, no, you actually just need to show up and work. Like,
right.
And life works the same way. So people are like, I don't want to be sad anymore. And it's like, okay, great. Well, what's the opposite of that for you? And oftentimes people would say happy, because I think we're maybe like conditioned to think that the opposite of that. And it's like kind of the same thing with fear, is like, People think that hate is the opposite of love. And it's like, I don't want to feel so hateful all the time. And it's like, well, really what you're saying is you don't want to be so scared all the time. You don't want to have so much fear in your life. So what's the opposite of that? Like being brave and courageous. Another one of my favorite books is Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. I read that on the way to my ayahuasca ceremony.
Dude, I love Ryan Holiday. Can't believe you just dropped Ryan Holiday. I love that dude.
Just name dropping tonight. Dude,
damn. Obstacle is the Way. Unbelievable. That was like the second book I read on my new venture of reading books, because I've always followed Ryan because I'm big into stoicism. And I was like, I've followed this guy, and I forget where I saw him, but I've been following him for years. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick up one of his books and read it. Obstacles Way is fantastic because it's all about, hey, listen, the hardest thing you have to do is probably the thing you need to do the most.
Yes.
Right? And overcoming that, it's makes me very happy that you just brought up Ryan Holiday.
No, dude, I'm literally reading Stillness is Key right now. I have Discipline is Destiny on the ground after that. Courage is Calling. I'm a huge fan of his as well. Nice. I love his writing. I love his storytelling, but I love the history behind it too. We can look through the passages of time and see these characters. And of course, he talks a lot about Stoicism, a lot about Marcus Aurelius, but so many other people, the wisdom of Seneca and Confucius even, like all of his work is just really speaking to these people who have already experienced life. And, to be able to kind of drop into their experiences and then see how they relate to exact present day, I don't believe time is real. It's really, to me, like
construct,
a continuum. It is a construct. Time and space is, a part of this dimension as we kind of look at it. But, to me, like these are all just opportunities for us to, model. And that's another thing that I learned from Tony Robbins and hypnosis is like effective modeling. Because when you can model someone who is stoic, and, oftentimes people think that it's just like a stern face and an unconcerned will. But when you really, kind of going back to how do you change your life, it's like, well, you immediately start to change what you're focused on. Like if you start reading Stoicism, you'll start to understand what these guys were thinking about. Like memento mori, like today is a good day to die, hoka hey, like all of these sayings are really going back to like these universal principles. And when you can start to embody those, again, you will literally start to change. And so that's another big piece to it, Cory, is like if you're sick of the person that you are and you want to do something different, start to model successful strategies, start to model successful people. That doesn't mean that you need to literally become them, but as you step into the way that they focus, the language that they use, the beliefs that they carried, all of a sudden you can step into a completely different reality, like literally at the snap of the fingers. And it sometimes can be that powerful, and it can just be that single spark that changes everything for you.
Yeah, you had mentioned about Ryan, like dropping someone in time and how it relates to the book and Stoicism and the Obstacle is the Way. He talked about Lou Gehrig and Lou Gehrig's disease and how much of a workhorse Lou was. Like that dude had the most consecutive like New York Yankees games played. The record still goes today. He was playing his last like few years with his Lou Gehrig's disease, didn't want to give up playing, but he knew that he had this. He wanted to be a role model for people. He wasn't a flashy guy. He knew who he was, and he didn't want to like let that go. And he knew like the hardest thing I have to do right now is get out on the field and catch a ball. And he's like, I can do that. I can do that. And I appreciated the ability to like compare and contrast between, okay, the book is called Obstacle is the Way. What exactly were we trying to talk about with Lou Gehrig's disease? Literally, Lou Gehrig like had a disease while he was like trying to, which is a terrible disease that just absolutely can cripple someone. And that dude was out there still in outfield catching balls, throwing stuff for the New York Yankees. Like it's insane. And when I hear stories like that, dude, I find the motivation. I'm like, dude, if there's a guy out there like that, and I can't show up for jiu-jitsu for an hour and I want to bitch about having to roll for an hour that I'm like too tired. This dude's out here. He played 1,000 games straight, and I'm over here complaining that I can't.
My bones melted.
Yeah, with his hands melting together, and like it's just the I don't know. It's just what a way to find motivation to help get some guidance. Especially when you need something in a certain direction. There's a lot of like your sales techniques self-taught, or has it all been from like reading all your different books and stuff?
Yeah, so there's only so much education you can get before you just got to go do it. That
Yeah.
being said, I think it's a really good combination of both. I would, back to kind of effective modeling, like for me to just develop my thick skin, it really was just a numbers game, and then eventually I got good at the empathy and, learning to read people within a half second of them opening up the door. And so, like, literally today, within half a second, I can tell if someone wants to buy from me or not. Especially if I were to start going door to door again, it's just a learned behavior, and you start to read people very, very quickly. But I think it's a combination of both. I've learned a lot of great stuff from just personal development and sales techniques. And then a lot of it was just really from going out and doing the reps. Very similar to jujitsu. Like you pull guard,
Having
and
the
all of a
balance.
sudden someone's grabbing the sleeve, and then they grab the sleeve, and you're going for the neck call. Like it's just exactly. It's a really good balance of like practical knowledge based or education based learning, and then field training.
Yeah, and that's that's a thing that I've said about martial arts. Like when I teach my Friday class, I'm always like, look, we're spending 1 hour together. If you guys really want to see progress in your martial arts journey, like you need to invest time outside of class, spending time learning from different avenues, different taking notes, stuff like that, right? But also using that knowledge and applying it in class seriously to the point where you're like focused, locked in, and drilling. It's the same as real estate, right? Because it's like you mentioned that I got a certificate. That was a course that Howard Hanna provided because we have some changes going on in real estate that directly affect buyer clients. So what I did was I took the class because I kind of wanted to up my game a little bit on how I help buyer clients, and took that knowledge. And you have to like take that knowledge from the class, and you can't just like chuck it over your shoulder. You gotta use it in like real life practice. Like that's also the other half of it, is not only just book work, but also like in real life work and applying that and seeing if it works for you.
Totally. Yeah, and I see it as cyclical, right? So it's like you learn something new, you apply it. And so for me, I would do it in my outbound, and I'd be like, "Hey, Cory, this is Dakota from Howard Hanna. I just recently finished my buyer's guide, certificate. Thank you for liking my post on LinkedIn. Hey, if you know anybody who's looking to buy a home, I recently just went through this training, like I said, and I've really understood some stuff that really changes and impacts how we help people buy homes. If you ever think of anybody, or if you ever know of anybody buying a home, send them my way. I would love to be able to use a lot of the stuff that I just learned." And now I'm literally just motivationally looping. Like I knew I wanted to get better. I went and learned. Now I'm using it as a reason to sell to people.
Right.
And that just repeats, and I would do it the same exact way.
Yeah.
I use case studies to sell a lot. So oftentimes it's a combination of education and then just storytelling. And it's like, hey, Cory, you run a giant commercial real estate property. Here's the 50 other giant commercial real estate properties that we helped that looked exactly like yours. And here's exactly how we help them unlock tens of thousands of dollars a year in savings for free. Like, and that's all you have to do. So same exact thing. It's like, hey, I just recently helped this buyer, purchase their first home. If you're in the market for your first home, I want to show you some of the stuff I just recently learned. It helped Jamie be able to purchase her first home in less than 90 days, like whatever it is. And then literally just using those case studies. And then of course, like all the good work that you do on social media, people read that and like, oh shit, I'm like Jamie. Like I need a first home. And Cory just got the certificate. So he clearly knows and has market intelligence that other people probably don't. And I'm looking at it in front of my eyes. So I am more likely to go talk to Cory than anybody else, even if I have friends in real estate. And that's how selling works. It's just like the social proof aspect of it.
Yeah. There is a big social proof to the whole salesmanship. There is a lot of, you got to be out there. You got to look for opportunities. You can't just sit on your hands and wait for them to come to you, because newsflash, they ain't going to come to you. You got to make those opportunities happen, my man,
Right. I just finished Owning Manhattan, which is probably no reflection of what the life of a realtor is on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, is that by Ryan Serhant?
With Ryan Serhant, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm a huge Ryan Serhant fan. Like I've read his work, I followed him for years. I think he does like great sales stuff. But he just released like the Owning Manhattan series on Netflix, and my fiance and I watched like the Selling Sunsets and all of those, which are great.
Selling Sunset is not the real estate world, at least not in Syracuse, New York, dude. I mean, maybe if we're in California, maybe Florida. I hear Florida is pretty wild. But in New York State, it's just a whole different ballpark. But there's a lot of common threads. They still have a business. They still have to find their opportunities. It's just on a grander scale, is all. I mean, they'll sell a $5 million property, and that's what I did in volume last year with 20 transactions or 25 transactions. So it's like that's just a different ballpark of an area.
Yes.
Any final thoughts or anything you wanted to end on? This has been fantastic. A whole hour. Thank you.
Yeah, man. No, I've loved jamming. I will ask you, if you knew that you only had 2 years to live, how would you spend your time?
If I only had 2 years to live,
and you knew it and you couldn't tell anybody,
I think 2 years to live, I'm probably for sure quitting my job and doing absolutely nothing but investing 100% of my time into the family. I think that would be the way to go, and maybe do like those little mini vacations Tim Ferriss is always talking about, like going to Cape Cod for the weekend or something, or doing something like that and going off for a little while. I think that's how I'd spend the 2 years, maybe with a little bit more training mixed in. But I think if I knew I only had 2 years, which means I would only see Ash until he was 6, Ivy 3. So like I would really try to make the most I could out of those moments.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thanks, man. Thanks, dude. We are like, I feel like cut from the same thread. Dude, it's crazy how many common threads we have. It's crazy. I definitely, I haven't gone through 5 open heart surgeries, and I definitely don't have scoliosis, and I definitely hate door knocking. But other than that, I mean, there's a lot of common threads.
Yeah, man. No, totally, for sure. Next time I'm in Syracuse, like I said, I come at the end of the month. I have my cardiology appointment, but like early September. I might be shooting up to Canada, so I don't have my schedule worked out yet. But I would love to connect in person. I, reciprocate that back to you. I feel a certain sense of brotherhood just hanging out and jamming online, and appreciate you having me on. And
hell yeah, dude. You let me know any other time you want to come on. You have some stuff that you want to talk about. You let me know. We're gonna make it happen.
Awesome.
Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much.